Thank you for the interview. Now then, can you tell me a little bit about yourself first?
From the beginning? Gosh, we could be here forever. Well, I'll put it very briefly. I was born in India.
Mm-hmm.
I left India when I was 18 years of age. I went out to Nigeria at the age of 20. I got married over there. I lived in Nigeria for 18 years.
Oh.
And then I came to Guernsey. I lived in Guernsey for 10 years. And then we came to Ireland on a fishing holiday. We liked the place so much that we were staying in the hotel we were staying in.
When was that? What year?
It was 1988.
Right.
1978, sorry.
Oh, 1978.
1978. And we liked the place so much that we decided to buy it. So at the end of the week, we put a deposit down, went back to Guernsey, sold the house there, and came back as hoteliers.
Uh-huh.
And have been ever since, and that's how we came to be in Ireland. And then the interesting thing is, I don't know whether I've told you this before, shortly after that, my father said to me, "Are you anywhere near Elphin?" And I said, "Why Elphin?" He had found a prayer book belonging to his mother, St. Annie Castley, born Elphin. So my grandmother was born in Elphin, and I'm now living about 12 miles away from where she was.
All right.
And I've travelled all around the world to end up here.
All right.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
And I think this is why I feel so comfortable here.
Now you've become rather famous in Ireland. For what reason?
Well, I am now the president of the UFO Society of Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And how this happened, so quite by chance really, well not chance, I always call these things synchronicity. In 1996 there was an article in one of the Sunday papers to say there had been a crash in the Curlew Mountains. The Curlew Mountains are just outside of Boyle, County Roscommon. And two people came down to check this out, investigate this supposed UFO crash. Did a presentation in one of the pubs here. And talking to the people in the town after that, so many of them seemed to be interested and to have had experiences of one description or the other, but never told anybody before because they were embarrassed, to be quite honest with you. And they said, wouldn't it be nice to form a little society where we could meet regularly and talk about our experiences and in an atmosphere of confidentiality, where nobody would laugh at anybody else. So we did that, and that was fine. And that went on for a little while. Well, then in February 1998, I was interviewed by Women's Way, and I was had a 2-page spread in Women's Way, and I shared the front page with no less a person than Robbie Williams. I must show you that. Look at that, Robbie Williams. When that paper hit the stands, I was interviewed by practically every radio station in the country, from Donegal down to Wexford, Dublin, everywhere. And everybody seemed to be saying the same thing. I saw something 20, 30 years ago, never told anybody before. Isn't it great to talk to somebody who will listen to me? But not only that, who will believe me. That was the important thing. So I thought, well, it's silly to stay a little organisation in the west of Ireland. I'll become UFO Society of Ireland.
So you created that in 98?
98. So overnight I just decided I am the UFO Society of Ireland. And I was fully expecting somebody to say, you can't do that, because we are UFO Society of Ireland.
Right.
And nobody did. So I've stayed UFO Society of Ireland ever since.
So in 96, that was a UFO crash, was it?
It wasn't actually a UFO crash. We never really got to the bottom of that, but we do know the roads in that area were all blocked off, and there were sort of men in black in limousines, you know, with American accents seen around the place and stuff like that. But what we think is one of two things. it was a helicopter crash.
Mm-hmm.
It was either one of these black helicopters that was around at the time when Bill Clinton was visiting the North. It could have been that, or the other theory we heard was it was a Saab helicopter from the Swedish Air Force being tested, and it had just crashed.
Right.
Because we do know that military helicopters came down from Finner Camp in Donegal,
Mm-hmm.
and everything was very hush-hush.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told by one of our Garda sergeants here in Boyle not to bother to even consider going down that road because nothing happened, but of course they would say that anyway.
Right,
Wouldn't they?
right. But at the time, though, lots of people thought it was a UFO crash.
They did, but
But you're not convinced.
what?
You wasn't convinced that it was.
I know it wasn't.
You wasn't, right.
And also, the other thing is that one of the people who came down to investigate had a Geiger counter with him, to measure radiation,
Mhm.
and they picked up nothing.
Right.
So I think it was just somebody thinking it was a UFO crash. I mean, I think he put it in all fairness, he thought it was, but it wasn't actually.
So before '96, were you interested in UFOs?
Not at all. Never thought about it.
So you'd never seen anything before?
No, never seen anything.
So what made you interested in them?
Well, other people seem to be interested in it, and I'm a great one for starting societies and
Right.
clubs and things in the town.
Mhm.
Started a flower and garden club and this
Mhm.
and that. And I thought, well, we'll start a club, and this sort of just grown from there.
Right.
And then, reading about it and seeing television programs, and now it's come to the stage when I'm so well known that people ring me up or email me
Yeah.
with sightings. So I feel there must be something there.
Right.
But there again, I have to be very careful. For instance, I get somebody saying, "Oh, we see this light every weekend, going round and round, every Saturday and every Sunday." And then I know it's a laser light. So you have to be careful. Or somebody will say, "We see this very bright light and it's moving very slowly across the sky." And then, it's Jupiter or Venus,
Mhm.
So you have to be a little bit circumspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just take, and also it's the way people put things across. Sometimes you realize that they sound genuine, or sometimes they just sound hyper.
Mhm.
You just want to believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very difficult to tell.
So what is your actual attitude today about UFOs? I mean, have you, since '96, have you yourself seen anything?
Yes, I have. And this was on the 19th of November 1999. I don't know whether you want to see this or
Yeah.
take a picture of it afterwards. This is the view from from my bedroom window. And it was the 19th of November 1999. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning. And so it was quite dark. I saw this orange cigar-shaped object going through the sky. And I thought, that's very strange. And people are always trying to tell me that the American Air Force trying to test things out, as though they're going to test them over a little town like Boyle, when they've got all that lovely Nevada desert to test them out on. So anyway, I saw this one, another, 7 of them all together in succession. And I thought to myself, this is something very strange. So a little later on in the morning, I telephoned one of my members who is very psychic. And I said, "Look, see if you can find something out for me." And he came back a little later, and he said he had a message. And the message was this: "Tell Betty that the UFOs she saw were there to assist the passage of time to ensure the correct sequence of events in the new millennium."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, what a message to get. And I really couldn't figure out what it meant. But anyway, when the new millennium came and went, people will recall that they expected all the computers to crash, they expected all the aircraft to fall out of the sky, they expected mayhem generally, and nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's because they were looking after us.
Why would this person, this friend of yours, have the message?
He's psychic and he gets channeling messages, you know. Some people have this gift for
Right.
channeling.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't, but some people, I have it for certain things, but
Right.
not for this.
So what, he was in communication with extraterrestrials or aliens or whatever?
Whatever, I don't know. You don't question where people get their information from.
Right.
You know, if they have information to give you, they give it to you in all honesty. And this is a person who's one of my members. He's a very respectable man, and I know that he wouldn't just be making it up.
No, no. And was that the first time? And have you had any since?
Yeah, that was the first time. On another occasion, I saw a light, which I thought was a satellite to start with, and it went into a cloud, and I was waiting for it to come out the other side, and it didn't.
Right.
And I thought that was very odd. And 3 of them did this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't get 3 satellites, one after the other, for a start,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just don't go into clouds and stay there.
Yeah.
And I have heard, which I've got nothing to like to prove it, and it was so happened so quickly, you know, it's just a thing in my mind. But I have heard many instances since of people seeing lights going into clouds and not coming out the other side.
Yeah.
You know, if it's just a smallish cloud, it should come out
Yeah.
the other side.
Yeah.
And these
So what time of the day was that?
Oh, that was about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like during the day.
Right. And what time of the year?
Oh, I can't remember now, but
Right.
it wasn't sort of winter or anything like that. I
Right.
think it was like springtime.
Springtime.
Yes,
Right.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
And how far apart from each other were the 3 lights?
Just
terms
like
of time?
just a few minutes, say 1 minute after the other,
Right.
the second one and the third one. And I was just waiting for them to come out, and they didn't come out of the cloud.
And were the lights flashing, or was it a steady light?
No, just a steady light. I thought it was a satellite, actually, to tell you the truth.
Right.
It wasn't flashing because if it was a plane, it would come through the other side. If it was a
Yeah.
satellite, it would come through the other side. It would just gone behind the cloud
Yeah.
and come through.
And it was the only cloud in the sky at the time?
Yeah, the only cloud in the sky, you know, quite a smallish, you know, big
Yeah.
sort of fluffy sort of cloud.
Mhm.
And they just stopped there. And I have heard other people say that they've seen lights go into clouds and not come out the other side.
Yeah. Well, actually, in 1973, I saw a flying disc. It wasn't a light, it was actually a flying saucer-shaped object, silvery. And there was only one cloud in the sky. And it flew diagonally downwards from left to right. And I had a friend with me. I saw it first. I was looking out of the kitchen window, and I called her, quick, have a look at this. Luckily, she came out in time and saw it, and she was like really shocked at what she saw, because she wasn't interested in UFOs at all, whereas I was. And we watched it, and she kept saying, what is it, what is it? I said, I don't know, but let's see what happens after it comes out of that cloud, because it flew into the cloud,
Yeah.
and it's just one cloud, and it never came out. And, you know, because it was flying like that,
Yeah.
there's the cloud,
Yeah.
it should have
It should come out.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, if it's going to carry on in the same direction, it's either going to crash in the ground,
Yeah.
because it's heading straight down like that,
Yeah.
or it's going to have to turn suddenly
And go up.
and
Yeah.
move away from
Yeah,
hitting the
yeah,
ground.
yeah.
But it never came out.
It never came out of the cloud.
And I will always remember the date,
Yes.
because it was the same day that but there were reports on TV that evening of UFOs all over the world
Is that
being
right?
sighted, and it was October the 11th, 1973.
73.
And so I was absolutely stunned that we saw this first, and then about 6 o'clock that evening on the TV were all these reports of UFOs being seen in the United States, all over Europe, all over Britain.
Yes.
And 2 days after that was the Yom Kippur War, the Arab-Israeli
right?
War, the second
Yes,
one,
yes,
in
yes.
1973. That was 2 days afterwards.
Yes.
So I know exactly what you mean
Yeah.
about waiting for an object that's going into the cloud
To come out the
and
other
then
side.
it doesn't come out the other side.
Yeah, yeah.
So what year was that?
I can't remember, but it wouldn't have been as
No.
early as that. It would have been, you know, 1980s,
Mm-hmm.
or probably after 1998 when I got interested.
Right. And that was round here, was it?
Yes, in my other house, which
Mhm.
is just up the road from here.
Right.
So it's the same sort of view that I get from here. But it was just like, as you say, the one cloud,
Yeah.
and you're expecting it to come out again on the other side, and it didn't.
Right. Were there any other experiences?
Those are the only
Since then.
two that I've had.
Right.
Yes, yes.
Right.
But I'm getting people ringing me or emailing me to say they've seen lights all over the country. So it's not just more reported in Boyle for the simple reason that I live in Boyle, and the people know me, so they know who to report to. But now, because I'm getting better known, I get phone calls from Donegal, Wexford, Gorey, everywhere.
There's an astronomer who lives in Boyle.
Yes.
He's a friend of yours.
Yes.
Eamon Anbro.
Ansborough, yeah.
Ansborough, yeah, Eamon Ansborough. And I believe he's actually set up a telescope and various other equipment for the sole purpose of seeing UFOs. And he said that he came here because he'd heard or had discovered that Boyle seemed to be a bit of a hotspot for UFOs. What's your feeling about that?
About being a hotspot for UFOs, or
Yeah,
about
in Ireland, and the Irish hotspot, or the Irish.
Well, no, I'll tell you, it's regarded as an Irish hotspot. Why? Because I live here.
Right.
And simply because people know me, they report to me. So I always say there are more reported sightings in this area, but there are sightings all over. Like if I'm on radio, for instance, say in Wexford, I hear about reports from Wexford. If I'm on radio in Donegal, Highland Radio, I get reports from Donegal. It just depends on, because people don't know. It's only now they're beginning to know about me, and because I've got quite a high profile, and I've had these very high profile international conferences, that I'm getting to be, more well known.
Right. So you're not the magnet for all these UFOs?
No, not at all. I wish I was.
You around.
No, they're not following me around, not at all. They're just reported over here because I just happen to live over here.
So do you think you're the reason that Eamon ended up here?
I don't know. I don't know. The thing about Eamon, to be quite honest, is that he's more an astronomer and a scientist than a ufologist, to be quite honest with you. So when he actually came here because of this, I don't know whether that's completely accurate.
That's what he told me.
If he told you, I think that's obviously the truth, then that's fine.
But you were saying something about Lough Key.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, this is very interesting because, first of all, on the 14th of December 1998, we were up the Meyler Tower. The Meyler Tower is a big tower in Lough Key. It is where there used to be a stately home there, Rockingham Estate, and this building was burnt down in 1957, and to mark the spot, this tower has been built. It's in the park, and we used to have permission to go up, because they locked the tower at night. We got permission to go up the top of the tower and just do sky watches there. And this particular day was the 14th of December 1998, and a crowd of us were up there, and we saw these lights flashing, left, right, and somebody said, oh, there's meteorites. And I said, no, but the meteorite goes down to Earth, it doesn't go horizontal. And these were going horizontal. About 20 of them we saw, going from one side to the other. We were amazed at this. In fact, some people got a little bit nervous, because they weren't happy with this. And then we saw a huge white light that just sort of appeared out of nowhere and then shot off like towards the west, and then just disappeared. So that was from Lough Key. It was on that date. And then another time, there was it was on the 1st of January 2005. There was a charity swim on one of the shores of Lough Key. It's called Doon Shore. It's a tiny little shore, and it's quite a sheltered little place. And they were having a charity swim. Well, as it turned out, it was a freezing cold day. Can you imagine having a charity swim on the 1st of January in any year? The thing was cancelled. But this lady's brother went down with her. He had just bought a new digital camera. So he took a photograph of his sister. Then he turned his attention to a little island which is about 500 meters off the shore. And this is the island here. He wanted it as a screensaver for his computer. Well, when he went home and processed it on the computer, he saw a huge white light in the middle of it. Now, if you judge by the size of those trees, they're fully mature trees, at least 30 to 40 foot high. And this light is about at least a third the size, probably half the size of it. So we're talking about a big white light. This is 1:30 in the afternoon. It was a grey sort of day, so it's not a reflection of the sun on the water, and as you can see there's no reflection of the sun on the water. It's obviously not the moon. Obviously not anybody shining a light from the island, because it's a deserted island. So he brought this picture to show me, and as he was leaving he said, "There's a portal there." And I thought, that's a funny thing for him to say. And for those people who are not quite aware what a portal is a doorway. But in our way of thinking, a portal is a doorway to another dimension, another space and time. And I thought, well, there must be something strange, there. So when I came home, I checked it out by a pendulum. I do a lot of work with a pendulum. And I checked it out. Yes, it was a UFO. B, it was not on the island. It was about 20 foot in front of the island. And C, there was a portal there, which would lead me to believe that there's a portal 25 feet in front of the island. Now that was the 1st of January 2005. On the 2nd of May 2005, two of my colleagues and myself went out in a boat, and the three of us went to the same area. Now I just bought a new digital camera, and I'm no good at photography. So I gave it to my friend and I said, "You do a bit of photography." So he said, okay, so he was just shooting away. This is about 10:30 in the morning. Again, a grisly old day, and we couldn't sort of see anything, we couldn't feel anything. We hoped we'd get some nice vibes and things. We didn't at all. So anyway, when we processed it on the computer when we got home, we saw this white light in the identical spot. Now to me it would look that the first picture I showed you was taken like a full face of a saucer on, and this second page was sideways.
Yeah.
But it's the same sort of spot that it took place on. And there again I checked it out with the pendulum, and that light was a UFO.
So when you say you checked it out, what did you do with the pendulum? How do you check it?
I have a pendulum. Do you want me to bring my pendulum and show you?
In a minute, yeah.
Okay.
But do you do it over the photograph or?
No, I just ask questions.
Oh, I see.
I don't have to do it over the photograph.
Right.
I just say, what was the light we saw? A UFO.
Right.
Was it in front of the island? Was it on the island?
Right.
Is there a portal there? I
see.
show.
Right.
Show.
So you don't put it over a map or anything like that?
Not for this purpose.
Not for that purpose.
Not for sometimes depending on what I'm doing, but not for this particular purpose. Now, this is another interesting thing to carry on with this. Just last weekend, so we're talking about the 26th of November, I went out on a boat with a TV crew who wanted to do some photography work, and we went to this particular site. And I asked the boatman, I said, just troll along this area and I'll see what I can pick up. And I had never done this before. And I was checking, I'd had my pendulum with me in the boat, and I was checking, and just over this one particular spot, the pendulum would go round to say that there's a portal there. And when we left that area, the pendulum would go up and down to say there wasn't a portal there. So that was confirmation to me that there is a portal in the lake there.
Right.
And then to finish that little bit about the portal, later on that day, this is just a week or so ago, as I say, this man was taking photographs with a camera that had been given to him by another one of the camera crew. So it wasn't my camera, it was their camera, the little digital, and he was taking photographs. And when we processed on the computer, there was a light in the sky. And it was a sort of oblong sort of light. Obviously it was quite high up, so it was, quite smallish looking from where we were. It was obviously not a plane, and obviously not a bird. So when I came home, I checked it out and said, because we weren't expecting to see this. When we saw it on the computer, we saw it for the first time there. So it was no question of it being tampered with or anything like that. And I checked with the pendulum, and yes, it was a UFO, and B, it was heading for the portal. So that gives me real confirmation that there is a portal there in the lake at that spot.
Right. How far's Lough Key from here, where you live?
Oh, about
For Boyle.
3-4 miles.
Right. So
And this particular shore is
Right.
about 3 or 4 miles, very easy to get to.
So if there's a portal that's not far from Boyle, then that might indicate that maybe Boyle is a hotspot for UFOs.
It could be, it could be,
Yeah.
it could be, could be.
And did you mention also that there's another place that's got a portal?
Yes, there's another place, and that is along the N61. It's just outside the Boyle Golf Club. N61 goes from Roscommon, Stokestown to Boyle. And just by the golf club there's a mound. And this mound is called Nabs. And we were able to go up to it on one occasion, but you can see it actually from the road. This mound is reputed to be the burial place of César. César was the granddaughter of Noah. Noah put her out of the ark, for what reason we don't know. But anyway, she found a boat, and with 40 of her compatriots she landed on the shores of Ireland. And this is actually recorded in the annals of Ireland.
But not in the Old Testament? Or is it in the Old Testament?
I haven't checked.
Right.
I haven't checked, but I wouldn't think they know about Ireland in the Old
No,
Testament, would
probably
they?
not.
No.
But they might say some land, maybe.
I never thought of checking that. But that's worth checking. Thank you very much. I'll do that. But this is recorded in the annals of Ireland,
Yeah.
you know, so that's good enough for me. Anyway, how she found her way to Boyle, I don't know, but she's reputed to be buried there. And I've been up to this mound with a medium. I've been with a couple of different mediums, but one particular medium could get a direct ley line from there to Mount Ararat. And
That's in...
Turkey, isn't it? Turkey, I believe.
Yeah.
And I believe that the Ark of the Covenant is reputed to rest on the top of Mount Ararat. Now, whether that's true or not, you know, one really doesn't know.
Or even Noah's Ark, actually.
Or Noah's Ark.
I think Noah's Ark might also be there.
Yeah. So that's one sort of layer. The other medium I went with was could see a cavern, a hollow in this mound. And I thought that was very strange. Well, on one day in November 2004, a young woman and her husband were travelling along this N61, and like it was getting latish in the evening, I saw a huge white light in this particular area, beams coming down, and I said, well, what did you do? Did you take a photograph of it or anything? She said, no, they did. A, she didn't have a camera with her, and B, the husband was scared, so they came to Boyle as quick as they could. But this would lead me to surmise that this mound could also be should we say, a hangar, for want of a better word, for UFOs, a resting place for UFOs. It was strange that it came out of this place. And this mound would have would be an area of very high energy as well, because in the olden times it was used as the inaugural site for the crowning of the High Kings of Connaught.
Right.
And this particular area, so it would have area of high energy. And talking about areas of high energy, I forgot to mention that on that church island is a ruined church. It goes back to the year 600.
Oh, does it?
So that would be an area of very high energy. You know,
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that at the time.
So that light with the beams coming down, that was what, immediately above that mound, was it?
In that area.
It was in the area,
Yes,
but
I mean,
not...
I wouldn't know whether it was immediately above, because you know, she wouldn't know exactly where it is now, but in that area.
Right.
So whether it was immediately above or not, I would think that that is a hotspot. And I've often had people saying that when they're driving along that road, they've seen white lights in the area. Yeah. So there's something in that particular area between this mound, Loch Nabs, and the church island.
Yes.
That must be areas of high activity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously in the old days they used to build their churches over pagan sacred sites.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the pagan sacred sites would be areas of very high energy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that, if the idea is correct, that you've got a portal there and a portal on Lough Key, and they're all in the Boyle area, it suggests that Boyle actually is a very important spot
Yes,
for
yes.
for UFOs.
Yes, you see, another thing, in this area we have quite a few very interesting megalithic sites. We have Carrickeel up by Castle Baldwin, which isn't too far away. We have Labbe Rock, which is up by Highwood, which is the largest portal dolmen in Europe. We have Heapstown, which is a big heap of stones, and that is all be areas of it's the Bronze Age cairn. They'd all be areas of very high energy. So this whole area would have high energy.
Right.
And what we are told also is that these UFOs travel along ley lines. Now, for those people who are not familiar with ley lines, they're lines of magnetic energy that go through the earth. And they travel along these, they use them as, how can I say, airways. And they use the megalithic sites as like beacons to guide them on their way, which would make sense.
And what brought you to Dowsing?
What brought me to Dowsing?
Yeah.
I can't remember what started, but I belong to the Irish Society of Dowsers. And I'm just fascinated by it. And I have a pendulum which only I touch.
Yeah.
And I will use it for all sorts of things. For instance, one of the things from a UFO point of view, like I say, is that a UFO, in the picture and that sort of stuff, and it'll give me the answer. And I've learned now to trust it, because at one time people just said, you're making it move. It's not really moving, it's just because you want it to move in a certain direction, it's moving in a certain direction. And I think, oh well, perhaps I am. And then, these angel cards and things that one gets. I used to do meditation evenings, and we always used to, put these cards out. And I always got the same card at one stage: trust, trust, trust. Whichever card it was an angel card, a dolphin card, a fairy card. It was the theme was always trust. And I thought, well, I trust. I mean, why do they want me to trust? And then it came to me that I have to trust my pendulum.
Yeah.
So now, if I ask it any question, I trust the answer it'll give me. And if it will not give me an answer, it's because the question I have asked, I'm not meant to know the answer. You see? So you have to be, like on one particular occasion, it's nothing to do with UFOs, but in fact I was in a television studio, and I was just about to go into the television studio, and there was other two people waiting. They said, what are you here for? And I said, well, I'm going to demonstrate my pendulum. And they said, well, will the pendulum give any answers? So I said, within reason. So I said, well, my daughter's going out with a young man who we don't think is very suitable for her. Will the relationship last? I said, well, I'll ask the question, but I don't think you'll get an answer, because it's not for you to know. It's your daughter's life. It's got nothing to do with you, really. And sure enough, the pendulum just quivered. It wouldn't go yes or no.
Right.
And I said, well, I didn't think I'd get an answer.
Right.
Because it's not none of your business. In other words, I didn't want to be rude to her, but it wasn't for her to know whether that was the daughter's life.
Yeah.
Nothing for her, nothing to do with her. I've just recently had a conference in September in the Bush Hotel, and I had one lady from Australia and a man from America, and people from other places, and it was in the Bush Hotel, and there were three places in the front that were never occupied, and normally the speakers sit in the front seats, and there's always the first seats to be occupied, because people can see better than you, and always three seats that were never occupied. And I thought it was very odd, that nobody ever sat in these. Well, one of my members, who is, I don't know if she's an extraterrestrial, but she's, unusual, shall we put it that way. And she has told me since that the reason why those seats were not occupied is because they were occupied by extraterrestrials. One was a grey, she put exactly what they were. One was a grey. The other one was what they called, the fair-skinned, a woman, with a cloak.
The Nordic types.
The Nordic types, and there was a man who was like a Nordic type as well. And I said, you know, like, what were they doing? So they were just sort of looking around and, you know, listening to all that was going on, you know, and just, you know, appreciative of the thing. And she was sort of, you know, communicating with them telepathically. They were just, you know, wishing the conference well and everything like that. Isn't that interesting that these 3 seats were never occupied the full 2 days of the conference?
Really, nobody would sit on them.
Nobody, no. There was no reason for them not to be occupied.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was why they weren't occupied.
Right.
Because they were occupied by you know, by
these
the
invisible
yes,
ETs.
yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Have you got your dowser? Your
Yeah.
pendulum?
I got it.
Tell us about it.
My legs are not getting in the way, are they?
No.
Now, this is my pendulum. I'm sure you all know about pendulums. It's a rose quartz pendulum on a silver chain. I use it for important things. I never let anybody else touch it, right? And this over here is what they call the essence of the quintessence of the masters. It's an orosoma thing. It if you if you use it, I'll give you some to put on yourself as well.
So what is this?
It's the quintessence of the masters. I think that's a Kuan Yin and Dwal Kul. Yeah, those are the Japanese one, and Dwal Kul is a Tibetan master. But it sort of heightens sensitivity of things. Now, for instance, if I were to measure your aura, for instance, right, with a dowsing rod, okay, I would measure the aura, and your aura would go about 6 foot, 8 foot. That's the average of a person. If you put that around you, your aura would extend out to 20 foot. It's amazing. I don't know what exactly it does, but if you put that over anything, if you say, show me the power of the stone, for instance, you know, get a stone anywhere from the garden or any artifact, the pendulum will go around like that. And if you rub it with that orosoma stuff, it'll go around like that. It's amazing what it does. So I always just bathe this pendulum in that, just to heighten the...
How long have you been doing that?
Oh, for ages and ages and ages. I don't know who told me about it, but I just do that. And I'm taking that away. I want to... So I always keep my hand very steady, because people will say, oh, you're moving it yourself.
Yeah.
So if I have my hand steady, I can't be moving it. Now, if the answer is yes for me, it'll go around. And if the answer is no, it'll go up and down.
I see.
And it's different for different people. So whenever anybody gets a new pendulum, you've got to say, give me a yes, and it'll give me a no. And it can be the other way around, or it could be sideways. Each pendulum is specific to a person. And if you are using a pendulum yourself, for serious stuff, which I do for this, I don't let anybody else touch it, because it's got my energies in it.
Absolutely.
And somebody else's energies. Not that your energies or anybody else's energies are bad, but they're not my energies. You see, so I have to keep it. So then I just ask any question that I want. Do you want to ask me a question? But you can't ask, will I win the lotto, because I won't tell you.
No, I won't ask that. I don't do the lotto anyway.
Okay, but anything with money,
it
will not give you, or it won't give you the right answer. And this is quite interesting, because I never use it for money.
No.
You know, because that's one of my principles. But it just so happened that through this cancer, I got involved with a racehorse syndicate, you know, with the cancer group. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And I happened to go to the races this particular day, and this horse was running in Maryland. And I thought, well, I know what, I'll take my pendulum and I'll have all the winners. And I did it, and every time it was wrong. And I thought, oh, this pendulum is just letting me down. But then I realized I should never have asked it. It deliberately gave me the wrong answers. Because I wasn't meant to know the right one. In this particular instance. And that taught me a lesson. You know?
When was that?
This was about February this year.
Oh, right, yeah.
February, March. I'll tell you about that one.
So where did you get this particular is it a special pendulum?
No, you can buy them anywhere. I
But
think.
is it specifically for dowsing?
Well, any pendulum is for dowsing.
Yeah.
You know, but you can dowse for different things. You can dowse for, like if you had the land, you know, where the ley lines are.
Yeah.
The land, or if there's a vortex, if you're looking for a vortex, you know, if you dowse for that. whatever you're asking.
When was the first time you ever used a pendulum?
Oh, I couldn't remember now, so long ago, and I can't remember what I used it for, you know.
Uh-huh.
At first I'd
What,
use it
20
just...
years ago?
What?
20
Oh,
years?
no, maybe about 10.
10 years
I've
ago.
only gone into all this sort of stuff fairly recently, you know.
Right.
Because I didn't have that sort of lifestyle.
So what made you think of going to the pendulum and dowsing?
I don't know, you know, see, when we came to Ireland and we had the hotel, and we sold the hotel, and then I did sort of various things, like I do a lot of seminars, workshops, crystal workshops, and you know, what you call it, crystal skull workshops and stuff like that. And one thing sort of leads to the other, and then I, you know, thought about the pendulum, and I think I was invited, or somebody said, "Can we go along to the Irish Society of Dowsers meeting?" And you know, I went then and I tried out myself, and I just do it for a bit of fun, you know. Where's the, you know, where have I left my keys? You know, are they in the kitchen, or are they in the, you know, that sort of thing. And then I sort of gone into more serious stuff, like the Titanic, for instance. That's one of the things that I check people out on, or if people have had past lives. You know, if they were connected with me in a past life, you know, because I have an Egyptian past life, and if people were connected with me, that sort of thing, and I check it out with the pendulum before I tell them or approach them, because you know, if you just say something, you know, well, I think you're so and so, I think you're so and so, you know, what basis have you got for it? I have no basis. It's just what I feel.
Yeah.
But then I check it out with the pendulum.
Right. So what, you have an intuitive feeling?
Yeah.
For what people's past lives were?
Certain people, not everybody.
Right.
I mean, you couldn't come to me and say, what was I in a past life?
Right.
It wouldn't work. That I would have to, you know, it would just sort of suddenly come to me, not because I'm particularly thinking of you or thinking of somebody else, and it would just suddenly come to me that, well, that person was on the Titanic.
Right.
For instance, I'll give you an example, for instance. It was the 2nd of November 2002. I have great memory for some dates. And this man rang me up, and he says, "Are you Betty from UFO Society?" So I said, "Yes." He said, "I've just photographed 2 UFOs. I said, "Oh, how do you know they're UFOs?" He said, "Well, there were these 2 lights in the sky, and they were just going in tandem together, and I watched them for quite a long time, and I took a photograph of them." So I said, "Oh, that's very interesting." So I said, "You know, I'd love to talk to you more about this." So he said, "Well, I'm in Boyle at the moment." I said, "You might like to come over. I'm in the house of my sister. You know my sister very well." So I said, "Fine." So off I go to their house, and we have a cup of tea there, and he's telling me all about this light. And then I said, "Now, what made you, you know, how do you have a camera in the car?" "Oh," he said, "I'm in the building business, and I have to just check on how buildings are progressing. So I always have a camera in the car. And when I saw this light, these 2 lights, I thought it was so strange. I took a photograph of them." So I said, "Oh, well, that's very interesting." So anyway, we had a great old long chat. I came home, and that evening I started to do I can never forget this, I started to do some ironing. I do things at odd times. About 10:30 at night, so I decided to do some ironing. And in the middle of doing this ironing, and suddenly it struck me, well, I bet Michael was on the Titanic. So I thought, that's a funny thing, you know, I only just met the man. So I checked the pendulum. First of all, you've got to say, do I have permission to dowse for Michael? It had, yes, it did. Was Michael on the Titanic? Yes, he was. Was he, was he a member of my family? No, he wasn't. Was he a crew member? No, he wasn't. Was he a passenger? No, he wasn't. So I thought, if he's not that, what can he possibly be? He had to be sort of something, to be there on the Titanic. He wasn't a crew member, he wasn't a passenger. So then it came to me, I bet he was the designer. And with him being in the building trade, I thought he designed houses. You see, there's usually some sort of correlation between them. So I checked it out, and yes, he was a designer. So by this time, it was about 10:30. So I rang him up and I said, Michael, do you remember meeting me earlier on today? She said, yes, I do, surely. So, well, I said, I think you were on the Titanic. So he said, what? I said, yes, I think you were on the Titanic. I've checked it out with my pendulum, and I think you were on the Titanic. And I think you were the designer of the Titanic. I said, can you give me some sort of feedback? Are you afraid of boats? Because usually people are afraid of deep water or boats or something like that. He says, not particularly. He says, I don't like big boats very much. He says, I've got a small cabin cruiser on the Shannon. He says, and in fact, this is very funny, the little cabin is surrounded with pictures of the Titanic. And he got a bell with Titanic written on it. So that was the connection. Right? So I said, you sure you don't do any designing? So he said, no, I'm not a designer at all. So I thought it was very funny, because that's what came to me, that he was a designer. Anyway, I was talking to the wife, not the wife, the sister, afterwards about this, and they were saying, a strange thing. He said, well, actually he does design. He doesn't design houses, but he designs like kitchen equipment, kitchens, interiors of things. So he doesn't regard himself as a designer, but he does do design work. So that, tied up with my designing. But then when I was talking to him about being a designer, he says, you're funny you say about being a designer, he says. Do you know I'm in the middle of designing a submarine? And I thought, that is the most strange thing. For somebody who's got a boat on the Shannon to be designing a submarine, I thought it was absolutely crazy. Anyway, I didn't say very much at the time, and I was talking to another friend of mine who's quite sort of psychic. And I said to him, Timothy, I said, why would the man be designing a submarine when the closest he gets to the sea is the marina at Carrick-on-Shannon? He says, it's very simple, Betty. If ever he went down again, he'd be safe in a submarine. You see? That was his logic. He didn't realise why he was doing it, but this was his previous lifetime, telling him if ever he went on the water again, he had to be safe. And what better way to be safe than to be in a submarine?
So did he get his design? I mean...
What? He was a designer.
Did he make the submarine, or...?
I never found. I never contacted him since that.
That was 2002.
Yeah, but wasn't it extraordinary that these things sort of worked out? It was just my intuition saying, and I just met the man.
Yeah.
I didn't know him. We didn't talk about the Titanic. It had nothing to do with it. All we went to talk about were these UFOs that he had photographed.
Yeah. So did you say that you had some connection to the Titanic?
Yes. I went down on the Titanic as a small child, and how I discovered this was I was doing a shamanic workshop, and the people understand by shamanic workshops they have very heavy drumming, and you go into an altered state of consciousness, and you find out different things. And we were asked to, when we were doing this, what they call a journey. We were asked to find out what we were, or what previous lifetime, was our latest previous lifetime. And I have a thing that I am going to ascend, go to another dimension, in the year 2012, which is the year of the ascension, is the end of the Mayan calendar. You've probably heard about this, the end of the Mayan calendar. And it's going to be not the end of the world like going up in a puff of smoke, but the end of the world as we know it for some people who wish to ascend. If they're on a higher plane, and they wish to ascend, they apparently will be given the will, the ability to do so. This is what we're told. Whether it comes to pass or not, we shall just wait and see what happens. But anyway, when I was on this shamanic journey, I could get the sense that I was, a young child, and I was drowning in deep water. And I thought, that was very fun. Anyway, when we come out of what they call the journey, everybody says their experiences, shares their experiences. And I was saying, what I got, drowning in deep water as a child. And I said, when the year 2012, nobody had better come on a big boat with me, otherwise it'll be just like the Titanic. And I laughed about that. And people said, you didn't say 2012, you said 1912. I said, no, I did not. I said 2012. Nope, it's 1912.
Mm-hmm.
That was my subconscious coming out and telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, then when I thought about it afterwards, and I checked it there again with the pendulum, did I go down on the Titanic? I can do that for you now if you want. Did I go down in the Titanic, and how old was I and stuff like that. So from that I realised that I went down the Titanic, and that to me now, Nabil, explains a lot of things, because I hate deep water. Even in the deep part of a swimming pool, I won't swim in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I have to swim by the side where I can clutch onto the railing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in the sea, I have to be just up to my ankles, or my knees are the very deepest. I can't do anything more. I was in the Galapagos Islands earlier on this year, and people were going snorkeling and things. I couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I just stayed on the boat and sort of looked at them. I enjoyed watching them,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no way I would have gone into the water with them, because I'm
But
afraid.
you don't mind going on a boat though?
I don't like big boats.
Right.
I mean, to me would be no. If you said, I'm going to give you a trip aboard the Queen Mary or one of these luxury liners,
Yeah.
I'd say, no, I think I'd rather fly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wouldn't be happy
Right.
going for no
And
other
you've always
reason.
had that feeling?
I've never wanted to go on a big liner is to a lot of people the epitome of luxury and comfort and the biggest wish
Yeah.
to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I've never wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind going on small boats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. When I lived in Guernsey, I did a lot of sailing actually, and at first I used to be terrified, especially if the boat was keeling over, in a strong wind, and I'd sort of be terrified about falling in. But I thought, well, the owner of the boat is not worried, and the other people are not worried, so why should I be worried? But I could never, like if we landed at a bay, the others would just jump in. I couldn't do that. I would go down the stairs and just go round by the boat so I could hang on to something all the time.
Yeah.
You see, so, and I've been like that for a long time. And so now I realise why.
Right.
It's because I've gone down on the Titanic.
Well, should we do that then? Ask the pendulum.
Do you mind? I must take off my shoes because I feel it's important to be grounded properly.
Right.
So I always take my shoes off when I do pendulum work, and I've got my elbow firmly against the floor. So I just need to connect a bit. Now if it's yes, it's there like that. If it's no, it's up and down, okay?
And what's the question we're going to ask?
I'm going to I just wanted to show you,
Yeah.
How it would work, so Did I go down on the Titanic in a previous life? I could say, was I a girl or was I a boy? Because, I could have been either. I'll say, was I a boy? Was I a boy? And it says, nope. Was I a girl? It says, yes. Okay, I'll ask how old I was. I'll say, was I over 3 years old to start with, okay? Was I over 3 years old? Was I 4 years old? No. Was I 5 years old? No. Was I 6 years old? See, I was 6 years old and I was a girl. And I drowned.
Do you know your name? Would you be able to find out your name?
Or you'd have to go through, it could be any name.
Yeah, and how do you find a name that you could ask?
How could you find a name that you could ask?
Do you have a feeling for a name at all?
I don't
Do you have any
actually.
favourite girl names?
I don't really, no. It hasn't...
Do you have any children? Do you have any children?
Do I have children?
Yeah.
Yes.
Any girls?
Yeah.
What were their names?
Julie and Gail. All right. Should we ask, was my name Julie? No. Was my name Gail? No.
No.
You'd have to go through so many names to
Yeah.
to figure out. There's nothing that sort of stands out in my mind.
Is there a question we could ask about 2012?
What do you want to ask?
Well, what is the theory about 2012 generally?
They can't tell you that. The only answer they can say
Oh,
is yes
I know,
or
but
no.
no, I'm asking you the question. What is it that we think is going to happen in 2012?
We could ask, if you like, will the world end in 2012? Would that be a good question to ask?
Okay.
Will the world end in 2012? No. Well, that's what we said before.
Yeah.
If we say...
Will there be a major change to the world order?
Okay. What's the question I'm going to ask is, will there be a major change to the world order in 2012? Okay? Will there be a major change to the world order in 2012? Definitely yes, look. That's a good question.
Will that change be positive?
Will that change be positive? Yep. Definitely yes. That's interesting, isn't it? Anything else you
And what
wanted?
was you were saying something about it would be a time of ascension.
How could I put it? See, the answer has to be yes or no. So how could we put it?
You could say, should 2012 be interpreted as a time of ascension?
What's ascension?
Ascension, rising up. Ascending to heaven or whatever.
The question I'm going to ask is, should 2012 be regarded as a time of ascension? That's right?
Spiritual ascension.
Well, you were saying something else about it, weren't you? What was it? You were talking about ascension.
Those who wish to ascend physically would be able to ascend.
Yeah.
How could you put that? So I don't want to frighten people. If this is going on YouTube,
No.
I'm
Well,
very careful.
what was your understanding of ascension?
Those who wish to ascend would be given the power to ascend.
Ascend to what? What would
Another
they be
dimension.
ascending to? To another dimension. Right. Okay. So the question might be then: is 2012 a time when people may ascend?
Who wish to.
Who wish? Yeah. Well, you know the question.
Okay, let me just formulate it. Would 2012 be a time when those who wish to ascend be able to do so? Would that be the right way to put it? Hmm?
Yeah.
Okay. Would 2012 be a time when those who wish to ascend be able to do so? Be empowered to do so? That's a better way, isn't it? Will 2012 be a time when those who wish to ascend be empowered to do so? Yeah. See, it doesn't mean that the whole world will collapse.
No.
So that those who wish to ascend would be given the power to do so.
Am I right in thinking that some people think that 2012 will be when most of the world will see UFOs? Is that what you've been hearing? I know there's a lot of
in fact, I think it'll come before then. In fact, there was a woman, and this is on the internet, it's nothing secretive. On the 13th of October, a lady, a medium in Australia, had foretold that there would be a mass sighting of UFOs throughout the world on the 13th of October, right? And in fact, this didn't happen. And, she was a bit disappointed, and a lot of people were saying to her that, she was just being stupid and, forecasting this. But information that I've had since then, it is because we were not ready for it. They were intending to do it. Apparently this was to be a mass forecast of spaceships throughout the world, en masse, to let people know that they are there. And apparently the mothership is above the earth as we speak at this moment anyway. But we are not ready for it as yet. And until we are ready, there's no way they can come down, because they wouldn't want to frighten people. So when we reach the stage when we are willing to accept them and to realize that they come in love and light, then they will show themselves. But up to now, as you know, all the films that are made about extraterrestrials and aliens and UFOs and things are always scary. They show them in the way of monsters, big fangs and, horrible creatures that want to destroy people. And they're not like that at all. And until the media come out and changes the whole concept in people's minds, people are not ready to accept them. Because even now people say, oh God, I wouldn't like to meet an alien, I'd be terrified. There's nothing for them to be terrified about. And people are not afraid of angels. Why? Because they'll always be portrayed as lovely cherubic people who are there to help you. Whereas alien, the very word alien, I don't like that word, because it means something that is against us. I prefer the word extraterrestrial. But until people are educated to think differently, they will not.
Do you think angels were originally extraterrestrials? I mean, do you think they were actually the same thing?
I wouldn't be at all surprised, I wouldn't be at all surprised. But this was very interesting about this 13th of October, because it was supposed to be for 3 days, 13th, 14th, 15th of October, these sightings were to take place. And I happened to be in hospital having my knee done, and the day following, that would be the 14th of October, I was looking out of the window, lying on the hospital bed, and all the little clouds seemed to be like little E.T. faces smiling at me, which I thought was rather sweet. And then the following day, I was looking out again, and all the clouds were like saucers, flying saucers.
Mhm.
I thought, there they are, they're all just watching me, and like nobody else would have seen them, and they were cloud shaped just like flying saucers.
Mhm.
You know, so they could have been there, but you know, people wouldn't know that they were there.
Did you know about it at the time, that it was supposed to happen?
Yeah,
or that you did?
I did.
So you were expecting it or hoping for it?
I was hoping for it, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I was hoping for it.
Right.
And I was very disappointed when nothing actually happened,
Mhm.
because I was hoping that, that you know, something would happen.
So, is it possible that it will happen in the near future?
I'm sure it'll happen sometime, but when, we don't know.
Right, but is it going to happen in our lifetime?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I definitely think so, yeah. But you see, we have to come to the stage when people are not afraid of these things. I mean, now, if the slightest hint of a UFO, the military send up their jets to try and destroy them.
Mm.
And of course they can't, because they're too fast. They've got such different technology
Mhm.
that they can shapeshift, they can just disappear at will.
Mhm.
So,
What do you think about the fact that governments at the moment seem to be trying to be more open? Like the British government is releasing more files.
I know, that's a very
and so on.
interesting thing, because the British government have opened their files, the Irish government opened their files, and I'll tell you the exact date they opened their files was at the end of September last year, because it was just before my conference, and I had Paula Harris, who is a very well-known ufologist. She's Italian-American, and she's a great researcher, and she was going to be talking at my conference, and in fact she was interviewed on Irish television about this, and everybody was very excited about the Irish MOD releasing their files. And I said, this is ridiculous, because they're releasing files that are 1987, 1988. I'm getting reports of things that are happening yesterday, the day before. You know, the fact that they're releasing their files, there's nothing to get particularly excited about.
Mhm.
The fact that they are releasing, I suppose, is something, is showing that they feel they got nothing to hide, but they got nothing to hide.
So why are they now releasing their files? The British, the Irish?
Well, I think there's so much talk about it, and then they realise that there is nothing to be gained by hiding them,
Mhm.
because you see, as far as the MOD is concerned, as long as these UFOs do not pose a threat to the nation,
Mm.
whether it's the British nation, the Irish nation, the French nation, the Dutch nation, any nation,
Mm.
they they let them be released.
But it's been shown on a number of occasions and reported, at least since 1967, that UFOs have the power to knock out nuclear missiles.
Exactly.
Now, shouldn't that be regarded as a threat?
Why do they knock them out? They knock them out in the testing. They knock them out because they shouldn't be tested at all. You see, what they're trying to do is to make the Earth a happier place to live in.
Mm.
The last conference I had a doctor, not a doctor, but a Mr. Robert Salas from America. He was in charge of, he was from the Maelstrom base in America, and his job was to be in charge of testing the nuclear missiles in Maelstrom Air Base, right? And he had the finger on the button ready to press it and make these things go off. And UFOs were seen to go overhead and disable these nuclear missiles. Now, why were they doing that? Because they didn't want them to be tested. They didn't want America to have capabilities for these horrible weapons of mass destruction. They talk about the Iraqis having weapons of mass destruction. They had none. The Americans have all the weapons of mass destruction. You know? This is crazy.
I mean, from your point of view and from my point of view, we think that's a great idea, but the UFOs should be preventing these missiles from being tested. And that, you know, from my point of view, I'm very pleased that someone up there is able to prevent us from launching nuclear missiles. But from an American government point of view, or a British government point of view, who are making these weapons at great expense, they wouldn't be too pleased that there is some entity or civilization that is so technologically advanced that they can prevent their government, the British government or American government, from launching nuclear missiles. So when the British government says we don't regard these flying saucers as being a threat, they're not really telling the truth, but because from their perspective, not from my perspective or your perspective, but from the British defence perspective, they ought to regard that as a threat because they can't launch their nuclear missiles.
Well, you see, the cases they have disclosed have not been a threat to national security in Britain. They, of course, in America, they haven't disclosed anything at all. And the only reason why this man was able to talk about it because somebody else had somehow found out about it, and he was supposed to be, sworn to secrecy. But since everybody else knew about it, the secrecy no longer existed about this case because they realised that it was in the open. But there must be a lot of cases like that where some of the governments feel they have to protect their own people. And that's understandable, but I mean there are always two sides to every case, and it just depends on which side of the fence you're on.
I get the feeling that some people think that with the government supposedly opening up more and admitting that they have been keeping these files and that they in fact have been for the past 50, 60 years or more been more interested in UFOs than they have publicly admitted, that perhaps they are preparing us for the big disclosure. What do you think about that idea?
I don't really know. I don't know whether they know more than they have let on that they know. The Americans certainly haven't released anything at all. It's only the British government, the Irish government very recently, the French government and the Brazilian government that have released files in a big way. But you see, especially the Latin American countries like Mexico, where they see UFOs all the time, Brazil, where they see UFOs all the time, it's not a problem as far as they're concerned. So therefore, the UFOs are not looked on as a threat to the government. So the governments say, that's okay, we welcome the UFOs. And I think if the other governments did the same thing, it would be equally good. But
so you're not convinced really that the governments are about to tell us, yes, extraterrestrials exist and they have been visiting us for the past 100 or more years?
Well, I think we know that. We know that. People who are like in the know.
Yeah.
Know that this is in fact the case. But they don't want to admit it openly because they are admitting that they are not as good as the UFOs. They haven't got the same technology.
Yeah.
In fact, what we do know is a lot of the technology that they have with different missiles and different things has been obtained from UFO sources. But they don't like to admit that because it means that they put themselves in a somewhat indefensible situation.
Yeah. Your UFO Irish Society has now been in existence for 10 years now, hasn't it?
10, yeah.
So what do you feel after having had 10 years?
I feel we're making progress, making headway. When I first started, people would laugh at me openly and they'd say, oh, did you see any little green men yesterday? That sort of stuff. And now they don't. Even my sort of parish priest will come to me and say, has anything been seen recently? So they're taking it more seriously. And then they realise, especially if they see somebody like me, who is quite a conservative sort of looking sort of person, believing in UFOs, they think, well, if she believes it, perhaps there is something to it. You see. And then the reports that I get, I put them out in a very factual way. I don't say, well, I think this is this or this is something else. I just put it out as it is. And ufology is becoming, how can I say, almost more mainstream. People have, you all find that they're listening to you more, not laughing anymore, at you. But then, I'm sure, especially people who are involved in these things get prank calls, and I get these prank calls. And one man said, Betty, what am I to do? I've got this UFO lady in my bedroom. She wants to make love to me. So I said, oh, I better think very quick, you know, this is sometimes 11 and 12 at night. I said, tell me, has she got yellow hair or green hair? So he said, why do you ask a silly question like that? I said, look, if she's got yellow hair, go ahead. If she's got green hair, keep away from her.
You were talking about how you feel that attitudes towards you have changed, but people don't necessarily think you're as nutty.
No.
Or taking the mickey out of you. I mean, the parish priest, for example, what's his attitude about UFOs now?
Well, I don't know, it's just that he doesn't, for him to say to me, has anything been seen recently? And then another thing, talking about religion, because a lot of people ask me, how can you believe in UFOs and still be a Catholic? I'm still a Catholic, I still go to church every Sunday, like whenever I'm around. How can you equate the two? I said, it's got nothing to do with it. And very, very recently, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, have come out with the premise that UFOs are real, they exist, we must treat them as our, should we say, star brothers and sisters, because to say that they do not exist puts limits on God, and God has no limitations. So if God can create everything else in the universe, and the universe itself, he can also create extraterrestrials. Isn't that a new slant?
Now, don't you think it's interesting that the Vatican should decide to make this announcement at this time?
I do. I think it's very interesting. You see, I believe they've known this all along, but they haven't wanted to make it public. But now I suppose they feel people are much more enlightened now anyway. This is the new age of Aquarius. It's an age of openness, of learning. The blinkers are off in everything. Not only UFOs, but even for a simple thing like, can I say, healing. 10 or 20 years ago, what I do, bioenergy and stuff like that, Reiki as well, would be considered a bit the work of the devil. In fact, I've had, some people, if I say I do bioenergy, they said, I hope it's not Reiki. So I said, why? Well, I wouldn't have Reiki done on me, that's the work of the devil. Even in this day and age. And I say, it isn't at all. I mean, it's just energy that's coming through. And energy comes from, if you want to say it comes from God, it comes from God. I say it comes from the universe. It comes from somewhere. It's not me that's healing. It's the blessing and the energy that's coming through, just through me. I'm just an instrument. I'm not a healer. The healing just comes through me, but from above. It's not me that's healing. And now this is a thing that they have known in the East, for instance, for thousands of years. But now it's coming into the West, and people are now beginning to accept that. Where now Reiki is mainstream. It's not considered anything very odd at all. Reflexology is considered mainstream. There's nothing odd. Bioenergy is beginning to become mainstream. Whereas before it was, if I'd done that sort of stuff years ago, I'd have been burnt to the stake for being a witch. The whole thing is changing. We're becoming more open. Open, I think, is the right word for it.
So you don't think, again, with the Vatican making this pronouncement, but they're, like the governments possibly, preparing us for the big...
They are. They're preparing us. Because they know this has been going on for centuries, and they're preparing it. I have here a picture. This is quite an interesting little picture. Just read out the caption of it. It's a picture that was painted in the 15th century. In the right-hand side, if you could look at it, you could see a man looking at an object in the sky. Now the painter had painted this, and all I could think is that we would describe this today as a UFO, but he saw something in the sky and he painted it, and this is the 15th century. Here's the big picture, the little man looking at the thing, here's it enlarged, and this is the enlargement of the thing. Now that's 15th century.
Yeah.
You see, and if you look at some of the old paintings, you'll sometimes
With you having
get
had the society
objects
now
like this
for 10 years,
that are in the sky.
do you have any
You know,
relationship
people
with, like,
sometimes
I mean, would
dismissed.
you get the police, for example, telling you of any
You know,
UFO
we-
sightings that they've
No.
had reported to you?
No, they
Yeah.
don't. And in fact, I did advertise in the little police journal, the notebook that they all carry around. And I was approached by the people who produce these notebooks to advertise in it, which I did.
Mhm.
And apparently it caused great hilarity amongst the Gardaí in the
Right.
various stations about this. And I was hoping that, you know, I would get reports from them
Right.
to say that, you know, things had been reported to them,
Mhm.
but I haven't at
No,
all.
so they've never approached you?
No.
No,
No,
right.
But then I think they're probably a bit embarrassed to do so.
Mhm.
You know, I think it still isn't mainstream enough
Mhm.
to be. But I do know that there is a man in England who does this. He's got his own organisation called Proof of Police Reporting UFOs, a man by the name of Gary Heseltine.
Mhm.
And he has been, he's with the British Metropolitan Police himself anyway, transport officer, and he is very interested in it. And because he's a policeman, he is able to talk to other policemen who have seen, and a lot of them have seen things, a lot of them have.
You have an interest in dragons?
Oh, this is quite funny, really. I haven't. Some years ago, couldn't put a date on it. I was at a crystal workshop, you know, learning how to heal with crystals. And this woman comes up to me and says, "You're a dragon master." So I said, "What?" "A dragon master." I said, "What is a dragon master?" She said, "I don't know, but that's what you are, and you've got to find out." So I thought that's a very funny thing to say. When I told my children that, of course, they thought this was hilarious. They said they didn't need somebody else to tell you you're a dragon master, because we knew that already. Anyway, I was trying to figure out, you know, it was worrying me why I was a dragon master.
What they were saying, that he was a bit of an old dragon.
Absolutely, yeah, they think I'm an absolute old dragon,
Mhm.
which I can be sometimes, you know. But anyway, but I think I'm a nice dragon. So I thought, well, I've got to find out what a dragon master is. Well, next year or so, I was in Australia doing a spiritual journey with a particular person, and wherever I went, I could see dragons because we were flying. We were doing a lot of places in the Aborigine sacred centres, shall we say? You know, the Bungle Bungles and places like that, which people, you know, tourists normally don't go to. And we were having to travel obviously long distance, so we'd go by small planes, so we'd be just above the, you know, about 2,000, 3,000 feet. And wherever I could see these ridges, and they looked just like dragons all over the place. And I used to tell people, "Gosh, there's another dragon, another dragon, another dragon." And we're laughing about this. Well, when I came back I was having Christmas that year with my daughter, and there's a lady in Cornwall who is a medium and, you know, very psychic, and she's a friend of mine. So I went to see her, and I said, "Do you know, Pat, I've been told I'm a dragon master, and I don't know what this is all about. You know, would you be able to help me in sort of finding out what I'm supposed to be doing with this knowledge?" So she said, "Wait a minute, I've got a book for you." So she brings me a book, and it's a book by a woman called Diana Bailey. Now, Diana Bailey and this woman, Pat, had got together, and together they had been in meditation and things like that. And it came to them that what had happened is that in ancient times the dragons roamed the land, and they were very powerful creatures, and they used their power and their might and their fire particularly for good and for cleansing. And then, you know, power corrupts, and a lot of power corrupts a lot. they started to get very cocky, and they started to use their power to frighten the people and keep them subservient. And instead of using their fire for cleansing, they'd use it for damage and, destruction. So Mother Gaia, for the sake of those who don't know it, Mother Gaia is the essence of the earth. Mother Gaia banished them, and she banished them to Tintagel. Now, Tintagel is a little place in Cornwall, just off Cornwall. And it's a very rocky place. It's also where King Arthur was supposed to have the Knights of the Round Table. I think it was Tintagel. And she apparently banished the dragons to Tintagel. And it was now time for these dragons to be released. And Diana Bailey came out that she was the head dragon called Drumeld. And she in fact had been also down to Tintagel. And it just so happened that just before going to see this person, I'd gone to Tintagel just out of the blue, because I just wanted to go to Tintagel. And these dragons had been released now, and they were to be dispersed to different parts of the world. Now there are 12 dragons, the 12 guardian dragons of the planet. And I've been told that I am one of them, and I'm the guardian dragon for Australia. And they're different. There's a friend of mine, she happens to be a daughter in a previous life as well, and she is the guardian dragon for Brazil. She's a Brazilian girl who lives a lot of time in England, but also time in Brazil. And there's a French one. And different. They don't seem to be of different continents. They're sort of strange. Like it can be Brazil, Australia, France, Canada. America, I forget now what the other ones are. Anyway, so at one time, 4 or 5 of us were in constant touch with each other about this dragon energy. And I said, what are we supposed to do with it? And she said, I don't know, but one of the days we have to all come together and do so. It's a bit like the crystal skulls. The legend of the crystal skulls. Do you know about the crystal skulls?
Probably, but maybe you should talk about that.
I'll tell you that. So I'm just saying, I'm just laughing, because wherever I go I see dragons. I see them in the clouds. I see them all over. I went to Egypt, and Queen Hatshepsut's temple in the desert over there. If you look at it, there's got big steps going up, and around the top the rocks, and it's just like a sleeping dragon guarding the temple. It's amazing. But you've got to have the eye to see these things. So that's my interest in dragons. So now people know that I'm interested in dragons, and I don't buy these things. They just give me statues of dragons and door knockers like a dragon and different things like dragon. So that's the thing of dragons. I'm just waiting to know how I have to use this energy.
So you're one of 12 dragon masters.
Apparently so.
And they're all living at the moment, all 12.
At the moment, yeah.
And you were saying that it's a bit like the crystal skulls.
Yes, there's a legend of the crystal skulls. How this thing sort of came to light, sort of, should we say, in modern times, is that there was this a man, it was Belize, I think it was, when he was an explorer, and he used to go out with his daughter. His daughter was about 16 or 17, I believe, at the time. And one day she went off into the forest on her own. She fell down into this cave, and at the cave she found a crystal skull. So she brought it up, to show her father. And when the locals saw this, they all fell down in adoration of this skull, and said it was, it was a very precious thing. And then the legend has it that there are 12 crystal skulls somewhere on the planet. Apparently 9, where 9 of them are is known at the moment. Different people have them in their possession. And they're very ancient skulls. And then the other 3, nobody seems to know exactly where they are, but they will be found one of these days. They could be in deep forests or somewhere at the bottom of the ocean, or I don't know where. And the legend has it that when a 13th skull appears or is found, all the 12, the 13 skulls will come together, and something very good and great will happen to this planet. So nobody seems to know what, but this is the legends, you know, the ancient legends that come about.
So there's 3 that are missing, and then there's a 13th one,
Which hasn't been found either as
which
yet.
hasn't been found,
Yeah.
but it exists somewhere on the earth.
It exists somewhere on the earth. yeah.
Right. And do you think the 12 will come together in 2012?
I don't know. I don't know.
But
It's interesting, there's 12, 2012,
Yeah.
12 dragons, everything's 12, 12, 12,
Yeah.
12 months in the year, you know.
And there's signs
So
of the
many-
zodiac.
12 signs of the zodiac. Because the dragon culture is very ancient. I mean, the Chinese have had it for thousands and thousands
Yeah.
of years. The Mexicans have the same Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent,
Yeah.
which is the same
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
things, a dragony figure. should we
Yeah.
say,
And of course Arthur being Pendragon.
Arthur Pendragon, yeah. In Mexico, they have, at the time of the summer solstice, spring equinox, March, 31st of March, and 21st of March, they have what they call the Quetzalcoatl coming down the temple at Chichen Itza.
Yes.
It's just a shadow,
Yes.
you know, and people go wild about, you know, watching the shadow
That's
coming down.
right. Yeah.
And then that's a sign that their crops,
Yeah.
that, you know, from then on they plant their crops. I was at a Crystal Skull conference, and this one was for sale. And as soon as I saw it, I said, I have to have it, because I wasn't into crystal skulls at all at that stage. But the reason why I wanted it is most skulls are smooth. This one, if you just feel it, can you feel? You see, it's got
Yeah.
3 little ridges.
Yeah.
Can you feel them? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 little ridges. Now, in 2002, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd of January 2002, in a little village called Vagina in Brazil, 2 little creatures were seen, found by these little peasant girls crouching against a wall. And they thought, of course, it was the devil. So, you know, the usual thing, police were called in and the army and the fire brigade and all that, and they were taken away. And they had these things, so apparently they were extraterrestrials that had, I don't know how they got there at all, nobody seems to know, but they have these what they call sigils, S-I-G-I-L-S, like bony protrusions, 3 bony protrusions on the head. So that was interesting. And the other interesting thing about this particular skull, it's got very deep eye sockets,
Yeah.
and you see there are 2 little protuberances here. That shows it's based on an ancient skull, because ancient man had very high cheekbones. You know, you've seen them in pictures, and very high cheekbones, and these little bony protrusions would have been like cartilage to hold up the skin, you know, on the cheekbones, and
I
other
see.
skulls don't have that. They're more like we are, you know. We
Yeah.
we don't have these very high cheekbones. So.
Where was that made? The skull.
This is very interesting, because there's a man in America, his name is Russell, I think, and he goes to Brazil and he'll buy a piece of crystal, a big chunk of crystal, and he can see a skull in it. He's one of those things. He sends that to China and tells them exactly how he wants it fashioned.
All right.
And they fashion it in China and send it back to him, and then he sells them. You know.
Right.
That's how these are made. This is based on an ancient skull, but it isn't an ancient skull.
Right.
And it's too small. It's not the full size, just a third size, I think, of a normal skull. But as soon as I saw these bony protrusions, I felt, well, you know, I had to have it.
When did you get that?
About 5 or 6 years ago now. And the other one amazing about this one is it's got teeth and laughing. Most of them are you know, closed. So somebody said to me, and you see this crack here, they said, this is definitely you, Betty. You're always laughing and you're cracked.
So was it cracked when you bought it?
Yeah.
And it's designed crack, is it, or did it happen?
Well, the crack must have been in the piece of crystal.
Right.
It wasn't through transportation.
Right,
Otherwise
okay.
it would have cracked completely, because it sort of goes from here to here,
Right.
So it's a flaw, obviously, in the
Right. Yeah.
in the thing. But then I don't take it as a flaw. I take it as the way it's made.
It's meant to be.
It's meant to be. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's very smooth, but the crack is inside.
Yeah.
You see, so it's very smooth on the outside. If it had cracked afterwards, you'd feel a ridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not, it's been polished over. And the fact that it hasn't come apart, it means it's meant to be like this. Interesting, isn't it?
It is. Have you any thoughts so far over the last 10 years as to where you think these extraterrestrials come from?
Oh yes, I believe they come from all different galaxies. Some we know come from the Pleiades, some come from Andromeda, some come from galaxies beyond our galaxies that we don't know about. Nabutal, one of the extraterrestrials that was at our conference apparently comes from a planet called Nabutal, which I'd never heard of before, which is way, way, way beyond our own galaxy. So they come from different galaxies, and there are different types of them. You get the greys, you get the humanoids, you get the not humanoids, like the praying mantis type. You get the praying mantis. You get the tall whites. You get different.
What about reptilians?
And the reptilians, that's the word I was thinking, trying to think that. You get the reptilians. So they're different groups of people. The same way as on this earth, you see first of all, different animals. I mean, you get an elephant who looks completely different to a mouse, and then you get humans, but a Chinese person looks completely different to an Indian, to completely different to a Caucasian, completely different to a Negro. They're all, completely different looking people, and yet we're all stem from the same source. It's amazing. So is it any wonder that the extraterrestrials have different forms that they can't obviously all look the same.
And as far as you know, from what you've been told or picked up, do you know how many different types there are that have been visiting the planet?
No, I wouldn't be able to tell you that. There are so many hundreds and hundreds. Whatever book you read gives you a different story. And there are different ideas on how they look, and what they do, what they breathe, and that sort of stuff. You can't. What I would also say to people is you've got to take everything that you hear, how can I say, with a pinch of salt. If it resonates with you, it is good for you, it is right for you. You might believe something different, I believe something different. I don't have to believe what you have to believe, you don't have to believe what I have to believe. And anything that anybody's heard on this, they just take away with them what they feel is right for them, what resonates with them. That's, I think, is the only thing that you can say.
Do you think amongst all the different types, that some of them are not necessarily benign?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like people on Earth. You get some awful people, you get some very good people. To say that all the extraterrestrials are good would be stupid, because there are some that definitely have a different agenda. They're not good. But what I think, and this is the media, especially the film industry, has made out to be more to be evil than good. If they're focused on the good of them a little better, it would be better for us. I think people would appreciate them more, because they are coming in love and light. There was another case, and I'll tell you exactly when it was. It was 2nd of November 2002, when a meteor was headed towards planet Earth. If it had hit us, it would have given a wobble. It wouldn't have destroyed it, but it had given a wobble. And 2 UFOs were seen to go up and intercept it and shoot it to bits. Now that's looking after us.
2002?
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a kind of contest or battle between the sort of benign aliens and the malign for the planet Earth?
Yeah. There used to be a battle, should we say, between the force of the dark and the force of the light. And at some stage the force of the dark were winning. And at that time we used to get a lot of cases of animal mutilations and of abductions, and serious abductions, where people were tampered with, for want of a better word. You don't hear about that anymore. And the reason we believe is the whole of the earth has gone onto a different higher plane, and the forces of the light are winning. So you hardly ever hear of anything of animal mutilation. At one time they were quite common, and you don't hear much of abductions. And I think it's because, or I do believe it's because the forces of the light are winning. So, who knows? We just have to, I think, look on the bright side and hope for the best.
What is your conclusion so far regarding what you've learned over the last 10 years or more?
I would say that all I have learned, from all I've learned, I would say that the extraterrestrials, when they do make themselves known, will be coming in peace and love and light to help us, not to make us frightened, and for people to open their minds. And if they don't believe in UFOs, that's okay, but just to open their minds and just accept things, because things are not always as they seem. I think that's about the sum total, not just to blank it up completely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.